It's Fill Your Plate Now, where every bite brings you closer to the farm gate and further from what's unhealthy. Now here's your hosts, Julie and Tammy, helping you live well by filling your plate well.
So, sometimes we have to address what's breaking, what's the current event. This time it's the New World Screwworm.
Yeah, a serious topic.
Sometimes
we have lighthearted topics,
Yes.
but I think this is something that consumers have heard about and need to
Yes.
know more and make sure that they're getting legitimate,
Right.
information from a good source.
It's a prescient topic. We need to help our listeners know that there's ways to be preventative and to know, especially for your own animals. But we've got an amazing vet here, Dr. Ryan Wolker. He's with the Arizona Department of Ag, and you are their state veterinarian for the department. And you've been with them since 2018, and you have an amazing background. I'm kind of wanting you to give us a little bit more about that, Dr. Wolker.
Thank you, Julie. So I've been with the department now since 2018, initially as an assistant state veterinarian, and state veterinarian since 2021. Graduated about 21 years ago now, I guess, from the Western College of Veterinary Medicine, Saskatoon, Saskatchewan in Canada, originally from Canada, born and raised there. And then ended up, pursuing some additional training down in Oregon State, which is actually where I met my wife. And ultimately,
awesome.
That's how I ended up down in the U.S. And I've been in the U.S. For the last 15 years.
So, Tammy, did you notice something? A few of our large animal vets that we talked to are both
also
from
Canada.
Canada. I love
Yeah.
this. They produce some serious large animal vets up in Canada.
It is sounding that way, yes.
So the first question we have for you is, what exactly is the New World Screwworm? And life cycle, the whole ball of wax.
So the New World Screwworm, it's an insect pest. So it's a fly. It was originally identified in 1858 by Jean-Charles Coquerel, who's a French Navy surgeon. He was actually down in South America, in French Guyana. He identified this fly actually in some affected persons were affected by the myiasis. So what happens is the fly lays its eggs, and it's the maggots that feed on living tissue. And that's what's really unique about this pest, in contrast to a lot of other flies that, cause myiasis in livestock and other things like that. In most cases, those maggots just feed on, diseased or dead tissue. But this particular maggot feeds on living tissue, and that's what makes it so destructive. The animals ultimately get secondary infections, sepsis, and, will often die from it ultimately if they're not treated. But it is treatable, and that's what's important.
It's treatable, it's important. And what I keep saying to encourage family and friends when they hear about it and they get overwhelmed, we defeated this pest and eliminated it decades ago. We're going to do the same.
Yes.
Yep.
Well, and now we know that it has been identified in Texas and in New Mexico. I mean, in Arizona, that's about a 500-mile distance.
Mm-hmm.
Give us kind of a status report on what you're seeing happening, and is there a potential that it could make its way across the country?
Yeah. Excellent question. So when you look at USDA has a great website available that the public can access, screwworm.gov. And you can look at the different updates, and they have a map on there with the active cases. So in Texas, I believe collectively we're up to 20 cases in the nation. Some of those are inactive now, but a total of 20 so far. 19 of those are in Texas. One is in New Mexico. The vast majority of those cases have involved cattle. Other species that have been affected have included goats and sheep. And there's that single dog in New Mexico.
It's sporadic spreading. That's what. Do you have any theories on that? To me, it's like spot over here in Texas and 200 miles away down here. Is it just, do these flies, are they so random in their flight path that, or do you have a theory on that?
So when you look at the biology of the fly, they'll travel probably anywhere around 10 kilometers during their lifespan, which is about 6 miles. So one of the thoughts, for the kind of the sporadic spread and what we're seeing here is wildlife. So wildlife are sort of that X factor that if they have infestations, which again are, admittedly difficult to recognize because nobody's looking at their wildlife, every day like a, livestock or pet dog or cat. They can travel, significant distances, and then you might see this, one case here, one case there, type of scenario.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, so the research I did, correct me if I'm wrong, but you guys have had a surveillance program that began August 2025 with fly trapping. Can you provide an update to the results so far? What all does this involve? Including the number of rounds completed in terms of the fly traps.
Yeah, we're up to 77 rounds of surveillance. So this program started in August of 2025 in conjunction with USDA. Most of our traps are situated in southern Arizona for obvious reasons. But our submissions, I think we're a little over 1,000 fly submissions to the National Veterinary Services Lab, which is the national reference lab in Ames, Iowa, that does all the official confirmation. And today we haven't found any cases of New World Screwworm adult flies. And to segue on that, every year we do anywhere probably between a dozen and 2 dozen foreign animal disease investigations for MI/ISS cases. So when a livestock producer or pet owner sees a suspicious maggot affecting their animal, they reach out to us, or their primary care veterinarian reaches out to us. And then if it's deemed, highly suspicious or anything like that, we'll follow up on it, collect those samples, submit them to the National Reference Lab. And again, to date, we haven't found any maggots that have been identified as New World Screwworm. And what we have found are flesh flies, green bottle flies, black blowflies. Those are the kind of the more common ones that we see.
Okay.
So if someone suspected that there might be one of the screwworm flies in their area or on one of their animals, what would they need to do as far as contacting authorities, and what should they be looking for in terms of symptoms?
Yeah. So the kind of the primary process here is for them to reach out to the Arizona Department of Agriculture. Usually the easiest way to get a hold of us is disease reporting at azda.gov. So that email address hits myself, and it hits our other assistant state veterinarians and our animal health technicians. And so it hits the group. And then we'll, again, assess the situation. If the people with the affected animal can take some digital pictures with their phone, they can email those so we can kind of see what they're seeing. And then that kind of gives us some more information. And then if we follow up on it, we'll assign it a foreign animal disease investigation number, and then we'll work with the client there to collect samples and get those submitted.
So what are the clinical symptoms? Let's imagine that something seems odd with maybe one of my pets, because you said any warm-blooded animal, and I know for our listeners that may not be farmers and ranchers, they're not having to worry about watching it in their cattle herd, but my dog, and that just seems weird around its eyes. What should I be looking for?
So this pest, again, it usually prefers entry into the body through wounds. That's not necessarily always the case. Sometimes, mucous membranes or areas of thinner tissue can be susceptible as well. If a person actually sees the maggots, that's pretty straightforward.
It's going to be obvious.
But sometimes, I believe that that case in New Mexico with the dog was presented to their local veterinarian just because it was feeling off. And then when they started looking at the dog, they found some small wounds. And then when they started exploring those wounds further, they found the maggots inside. And that's one of the things with screwworm here, is that they do tend to burrow into the body. And so, a wound might appear fairly small and innocuous on the surface. But once, it's being evaluated and kind of explored more thoroughly, sometimes there's large cavities underneath. With any kinds of MI/ISS cases, sometimes there's an odor. So if your animal is not feeling well, it goes off of its feed, and you notice an odor, those would all be concerns, along with any kind of open wounds.
You've said it a couple times to Tammy. You maybe know what the word MI/ISS? MI/ISS. What does that mean?
MI/ISS simply refers to infestation of the animal with maggots.
Oh, okay.
So, and you had mentioned that they usually only during their lifespan travel about 6 miles. So are you thinking that it is spread through wild animals, and that's how it's jumping from like Texas to New Mexico?
So the Texas cases are probably being spread by wildlife. That's kind of the current thought there. The other means is travel associated, right? If you put a load of cattle on a truck or a dog in a car and drive it to another location, it'll spread that way too. So so it might be vehicular associated.
As a large animal vet, that's not a question on my list, but are you concerned that maybe it's the wildlife populations that are spreading it? Because how do you manage / control? I mean, you're not going to be watching a herd of elk. They're wildlife.
Mm-hmm. So we've partnered, in the state. I know they're doing this in Texas as well, and they have done it in Mexico. But they've partnered with their, wildlife agencies, whether that be, domestically here with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, USDA Wildlife Services, our own Arizona Department of Game and Fish. But there's been outreach that's been conducted, with hunters and, the tags that they get and the unit managers for those hunting units, that if they see any wildlife that are, diseased or, compromised in any way, to be on the lookout for New World Screwworm infestation and to, call the respective agency to respond and follow up on that further.
Are there practical preventative and management strategies, both for the homeowner with pets and for our ranchers?
Yeah. So when you look at New World Screwworm, kind of I like to say it really likes the 3 W's. So it's woods, water, and warm-blooded animals. And so for, the question revolving around ranchers there, if you have a dirt tank and vegetation around it, it might behoove you to remove some of that nearby vegetation to minimize the likelihood that you're going to attract the screwworm flies to that area. At this point in time, with no cases in Arizona, we're not advocating preventative use of drugs or pesticides, because there is a component, just like with antibiotics. You go into the hospital, you have your hip replaced, you don't want antibiotic resistance. And similarly with, New World Screwworm here, we don't want to overuse the products that we have to potentially contribute to resistance developing amongst the screwworm fly population.
So the best thing for me to do right now as a homeowner with animals and or being a rancher is to be vigilant and diligent of always checking my animals. And then your great tip about if I've got vegetation around the water areas, clean it and clear it up.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. And, kind of the most important tool that anybody has, at their disposal right now is their eyes, right? So that close inspection of your cat, your dog, your cattle, your horses, that's all kind of very critical at this point in time.
And if caught in time, you can treat the animal and they're okay.
Correct.
They can thrive and have a wonderful life.
Absolutely.
And I know we've seen it primarily in cattle. This doesn't affect the meat of the cattle. It just is affecting the cattle in general because it's of the infestation, correct?
Yeah.
So it's not of danger to humans.
No, and we were kind of talking about that a little bit earlier. This is potentially a food security issue, but not a food safety issue. So, much like, at the federal level with federally inspected slaughter inspection at those federal plants, on the state side with our state meat inspection, we have inspectors in place that ensure that, no meat is passing into the food chain that's not, suitable and nutritious and, for good quality.
The animals that were diagnosed, do you happen to know, like the ones in Texas and New Mexico? It sounds like the dog recovered, that they caught it in time. The cattle, same thing, or do we even know that?
The vast majority of them have recovered. I believe there was one sheep in Texas there that I think had a mammary gland tumor or something like that. But it was humanely euthanized, but not because of the screwworm, but because of the cancer.
And almost this whole issue almost makes you pay attention to your animals a little bit more. And I'm speaking more to us as homeowners that have pets, that sometimes, when we raise the red flag of caution, attention, prevention, or preventing, is us paying attention to our animals a little bit better.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So in the case of animal husbandry, with all of this going on, do you foresee any changes
That's an excellent question, Tammy. And yes, so ranchers, dairymen, even pet owners may have to change some of the husbandry practices they've normally been accustomed to. When you look at screwworm, I mentioned that it does look for open wounds, and so when you think of dehorning, castration, kind of the normal animal treatments and stuff that ranchers and producers do, you might have to start looking at doing those procedures during the cooler times of year to take advantage of those months when screwworm would be less active because the environmental temperatures, are too low for peak activity of the fly.
So when it cools off, then naturally you have that population, the screwworm population decrease?
Yes.
Okay.
And then you have mentioned in previous talks that a lot of times the entry point for the screwworm is like the umbilical cord of a newly born calf. Is there something that they could do in their animal husbandry that they could change even in that? Like,
Yeah. So, and what they're doing down in Mexico, they've been predominantly using ivermectin, but the big push has been to change to using Dectomax, which has been a newly approved drug from the FDA that has a conditional use approval for livestock and cattle.
and how do they apply that? Is that
It's an injectable.
okay?
Yeah. And so basically, any newborn calf, you go through your standard, navel dip, probably spray the area with a permethrin spray, which is an insecticide, and then also give the animal a shot of Dectomax, and that has residual activity up to 21 days to prevent reinfestation.
Oh, awesome.
And you mentioned Mexico. Are there other countries that are having issues with the New World screwworm?
Yes, so I believe it was back in 2023 when the New World Screwworm made it past Panama, and it filtered up through Central America and then into Mexico. I believe to date, Mexico has somewhere around 29,000 cases.
Wow.
By and large, the most commonly affected animal or species has been cattle, with the second most commonly affected animal being dogs. So the Copeg facility is the facility down in Panama that produces the sterile flies, and if you want, we can kind of discuss that a little.
Yeah.
So the original eradication strategy is really quite brilliant. They used the fly's own biology sort of against it. These flies, the female flies, they mate only once in their life. So if they mate with a sterilized male fly, all those eggs that the female lays, they're not going to develop, they're not going to hatch or anything like that, and if you effectively cut the life cycle.
It is brilliant.
Yeah.
That they did that.
Yeah, and that was kind of post World War II, and obviously a lot of nuclear research going on and all that sort of thing. But they found that they could sterilize these flies with gamma radiation, and then again you flood the area with sterile flies, and you interrupt that life cycle, and you can eradicate the pest.
And I have heard that they're already using sterile flies from Mexico, right?
Just to back up there a little bit, so Copeg, the facility in Panama, is currently the only production facility that's up and running.
Okay.
It's producing roughly 100 million flies per week. Back in the 60s, when we were eradicating this pest, we were releasing around 500 million, so we're about 400 million short right now. USDA working with the Mexican federal government in Seneca, which is the equivalent body of USDA in Mexico there, the federal level. They're busily renovating a fly facility down in Matapa, Chiapas, which will be coming online here shortly, actually at the end of July, I believe. And ultimately by November, that facility will also be producing 100 million flies per week. So that's 200 million. And then Secretary Rollins, probably a couple months ago now, I guess, announced that Moore Air Force Base in Texas was the sited location there for the production facility domestically for the U.S. And that'll come online here in about another year or so, year and a half, and it's slated to produce 300 million flies per week.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask you. How many?
Yeah.
So I have, real quickly, I've heard that Arizona, we may not have a production facility, but we're hoping they can even maybe consider reopening the Douglas facility for more fly dispersal.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Back in the 60s during eradication efforts, Douglas Municipal had a distribution facility that was active. And, obviously after the pest was eradicated, a lot of that infrastructure got shut down. decommissioned. But we had met with you several months ago there to look at Bisbee Douglas International Airport and county supervisors to look at that facility as a potential option there for a distribution facility. And we actually just earlier today had a meeting with USDA on that specific topic. So
Yes.
we're continuing to push forward on that front.
Good.
Having the domestic distribution and production facility in Texas, you really need another distribution facility somewhere between Texas and California to cover both, California needs, New Mexico needs, and then any drops into Chihuahua and Sonora.
We have a very long border.
We do.
Yeah, and it sounds like then there is a network of state to state and USDA coordination.
Yes.
Has that always been in place, or?
That's always been in place.
Okay.
Yeah. If it's not screwworm, we're dealing with other, program diseases like tuberculosis or brucellosis and surveillance there. So we have good lines of communication across the states and up and down between the federal and state governments.
So
Coordinated effort.
Yeah, coordinated. So maybe you feel prepared, but what if one of your fly traps, or just because of somebody's intimate observation of their animal, you guys send it up to the lab and it is confirmed as a screwworm fly?
Mm-hmm.
What kind of walk us through what happens then in Arizona, especially with Arizona Department of Agriculture taking the lead?
Yeah. In many ways, it's really handled kind of the same way that we treat any foreign animal disease. Last year, we dealt with high path avian influenza, and we've dealt with equine infectious anemia over the years as well. But the general kind of playbook there, and specifically for New World Screwworm, there is a playbook that I worked on with some of the other states as part of that New World Screwworm working group. But the playbook basically develops, the protocols and procedures and guidelines that, the states have sort of agreed to follow. And so what happens if we have a confirmation there? Again, it gets confirmed at the national lab in Ames, Iowa. Then there will be messaging sent out by USDA, subsequently state and county messaging, announcing that we have a confirmed case. At that point, a quarantine zone is set up. That quarantine zone is 10 kilometers or 6 miles. And there's an adjacent surveillance zone around that, which is another 10 kilometers or 6 miles. So you basically have essentially a 12-mile zone around that infested premises. Any animals within the infested zone are essentially under quarantine, so they will require permitted movement to move out of that infested zone, and that's going to require some paperwork and documentation of treatment. So it's not saying that we're not here to stop commerce. We're here to facilitate commerce in a responsible manner.
How do you treat an animal that's been diagnosed with the screwworm?
Yeah. So over the last probably 6 to 10 months or so, USDA has been working very closely with the Food and Drug Administration and EPA. You look back at our response in the 60s, a lot of the pesticides we had back then, we don't have access to now. They've been removed from market for a variety of reasons, and similarly with some of the medications. So USDA has been working with FDA and EPA to get medications and pesticides that we do have available now to have that conditional use approval or emergency use authorization for screwworm. And so there's a variety of products that FDA and EPA have approved for screwworm treatment.
But it sounds like it's really treatable.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Caught early, it's very treatable.
Well, it sounds like you're putting steps in place as well so that you can eradicate it once and for all. So in case something might pop up, you'd be able to take care of it immediately.
Are you of the mind that it's not if it hits Arizona, but when? And does that shift any of your thinking on your team in order of just being ready for this?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would tend to agree with that sentiment. That I do think it's not a matter of if but when. When you look at the progression of the pests, through Latin America and then up through Mexico, the reality is we just don't have the number of sterile flies that we did back in the 60s to be able to successfully push it back. Couple that with, probably a change in sort of the demographics and the economics of, livestock animal production these days. There's a lot more transport of animals across state lines to distant slaughterhouses. You got your feed yards, located in one state. You got, big slaughterhouses elsewhere, and that's part of that whole mechanism there. So there's more opportunity for animal movement. So I do think that at some point we will get a positive case.
Yeah, and the importance to us in the ag world is just to recognize how vigilant we have to be at viewing our animals. But the reality of it, we've got wildlife, and you have shown, and you'll be working with Game and Fish on, even then you can be very observational. But what about, because you hear about even feral animals, whether they be feral pigs, I don't know if we have that much of a population, but some feral cattle, they're not under a rancher's supervisory role. What's your reaction to that?
Those are challenges. There's no doubt there. And we just have to do the best we can with the observational tools that we have and the personnel that we have, that we catch those as soon as possible. And again, trying to get the sterile production fly facilities online for those blanket releases to help drive the pests south.
And I think the good news is there is a plan, and there is a way to eradicate them, and it's treatable if you think your animal may have come in contact with the New World screwworm. And I think those are all positive points, that it's not necessarily detrimental.
Yes.
Yeah, and just the encouragement I'm sure that you have to give those in the animal ag world, and whether you're managing a dairy in Tammy's world or me and my world with the ranchers, are there any specific, and maybe it's your 3 W's again, but give us, for the animal ag world, their tips to make sure, even though it's crossing New Mexico, Texas, it might come to Arizona. What do they need to do?
Be vigilant, be observant, be vigilant. Please report immediately, if you have a suspect case. Don't try and, treat it yourself or, deal with it on your own. We're here to work with the public and work with ranchers and, dairymen and everything else. And that collaborative effort is going to be what gets us through this pest outbreak.
So when this pest outbreak is eradicated,
Yeah,
tell us a little bit about what the scope of your job is beyond this, and what all you cover, and what your typical day would be like.
There is no typical day.
I bet.
This job has been very interesting. So this is sort of my second career. Prior to this, I spent 15 years as an equine veterinarian, horse vet.
Oh.
And this job never, ceases to amaze me. The blend of, science, public relations, outreach, political policy, it all kind of comes together to move that needle. And, as a veterinarian working with an individual animal, you're kind of at that, 3-foot level, whereas we're kind of working at the 30,000-foot level. And so it's just kind of very interesting to see what kind of changes we can make at scale. So I guess, to summarize my daily day-to-day, we're responsible for program disease testing. As I mentioned, tuberculosis and brucellosis earlier. Those are potentially zoonotic diseases. And, if private veterinarians in their kind of first surveillance level round of testing come up with a suspect, we do the follow-up testing on those animals to ensure that they're healthy. And that encompasses a good part of our day. For an animal disease investigation, community outreach, all of those things.
And I don't know, Tammy, but I get a vibe from you while you're focused on the concerns of this. This is an important issue. It's not overwhelming because you guys at the Arizona Department of Ag, this is what you do. You're tracking these potential diseases.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, last last end of November, going into December there, everybody was getting ready for the National Finals Rodeo in Vegas. There was that equine herpes virus outbreak in
Yeah,
Texas,
you're right.
Guthrie, Oklahoma, I think it was. And so we had to, institute some emergency response there with some of those horses that were coming this way, and then going on to Vegas. And so this is, as you say, this is kind of what we do on a daily basis. So we're well versed in foreign animal disease response.
I guess they can't get overwhelmed.
This is their job. And equine-wise, there have not been any cases identified at this point. Is that
Not that I'm aware of,
correct?
no.
Okay.
Yeah. And then, we also had the bird flu. That was an issue. And
Yes.
sometimes when you'd have to go and help depopulate,
Mhm.
because a virus like that definitely kills the bird.
Yes,
Yeah.
it was devastating. And, last year, that collective outbreak, impacted 6.6 million poultry. So,
Well, again, give us some final statements, even final encouragement for our listeners. And I know that between Tammy and I, we have a good cadre of dedicated farmers and ranchers, dairymen. What else would you end on for us?
I would say, everybody just be observant, be vigilant. Please work with us. We're engaged with the community. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. We're happy to do, one-on-one educational sessions with different commodity groups, whether it be UDA or any of the other groups out there. Obviously we've done,
Yes.
episodes with Farm Bureau. We had that workshop back in December, actually.
Yeah.
In Wilcox,
Right.
specifically focused on screwworm.
And I think you have a few other things coming up. So we can
Yeah.
always check it out on the website, the Arizona Department of Ag website.
Absolutely.
And then also mention that other website that you spoke of that's actually serving as a tracker and talking about all sorts of other things related to the screwworm.
Yes. So USDA has their website, screwworm.gov.
Okay.
And it has a variety of educational resources there. There's a map with the current, pest outbreak and where it's been located, active and inactive cases. So I'd encourage the public to, keep an eye on that. You can check it at coffee time every morning and see the current situation.
One of my team members that's tracking it and has already written an article and will be writing some other articles, she said that she visits it daily already.
Yeah.
So screwworm.gov.
Yep.
Okay.
Appreciate you being so approachable, and knowledge is power. So
Absolutely.
I think it's great to get this information out there so there is no misinformation about this topic, and to know that it's being handled.
Because we talked to the doctor, we feel very confident, and we can do a little bit of our own diagnoses, but we definitely need to call upon you guys when we discover something.
Yes.
Thank you once again.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
Pleasure being here.